Alright guys, welcome back to Unfuck Your Program, the new series for the new year. Today we're going to start talking about what was by far the most requested topic from last time, and that was how to incorporate assistance exercises for hypertrophy into your strength training program. So this is a pretty complicated topic, so it's going to take us a while to get through it. We're going to take it one piece at a time. We're going to start with a little overview of what we talked about in the last series. So when we're training for strength, there's two things that we're going for: bigger muscles and more efficient muscles. Bigger muscles is pretty simple. Bigger muscle is a stronger muscle. Greg Nuckols has a great analogy for this. It's like a cup of water. The cup represents the size of the muscle. Bigger cup, bigger muscle. The water represents your strength. More water, more strength. So we can have a big ass cup that only has a little bit of water in it. This is like having a big ass muscle that's not that strong. We can have a teeny tiny cup that's full all the way to the top of water. That's like being super, super strong, but also being pretty small. And we can have a big ass cup that's full of water, and that's what pretty much everybody is going for, right? So the rest of this lesson is talking about how do we get this big ass cup full of water. So that's one example. The other deals with more efficient muscles, and we could get real deep into the science about this, but I'm not going to. More or less, what it comes down to is as you train, as you practice, your muscles get more efficient at performing the movements that you're doing. So you can recruit more muscle fibers so that the muscle that you have works better. So we go about this in more or less three different ways. Again, this is at a very, very high level. So first, we have a progressive resistance training program where we add weight, maybe not each workout, but over time, and we do that using periodization, right? Volume and intensity. That gives us the bigger muscles. We also practice, right, to get those more efficient muscles by adding frequency. And third, we incorporate balance. We do that by using variations to bring up our weak points, and they can be weak for whatever reason. But in creating that balance, it not only makes us more efficient at the movements that we're practicing, it also allows us to get more volume into our program, and it helps to prevent injury as well. So that's strength. When it comes to size, it's a little bit different ballgame. There's two aspects of size. One is hypertrophy. That's making the muscle fibers that you already have bigger. The other is hyperplasia. That's making new muscle fibers, right? Obviously, if you have new muscle fibers, more muscle fibers, the muscle's going to look bigger, but it's a little bit different. Hyperplasia is not real well understood scientifically, not as well as hypertrophy. So we're going to get to that a little bit later. All right? Now, when we're talking about hypertrophy, there's two things we have to keep in mind. Hypertrophy: sufficient stimulus and proper environment. And to understand that, let's go back to general adaptation syndrome. Remember that when we train, we kind of damage the muscles, we hurt them, we cause a training response. And for a little while, we're in that alert phase, and alarm phase, Our muscles are actually weaker than they were before we trained. And then our bodies recover. So that's where hypertrophy comes in. What happens is, while your body's recovering, something occurs called muscle protein synthesis, where your body takes the protein in your body and it uses it to make bigger, stronger muscles. That's how you recover. That's why general adaptation syndrome works when it comes to training. In order for that to happen, you need two things. You need the training response, and we'll come back to this. You also need the proper environment. Proper environment, very, very complicated, but more or less you can boil it down into having a caloric surplus, having enough calories to grow, and then having muscle available when your body's ready to recover. I'm sorry, not muscle available, having protein available when your body's ready to recover. This is why it's so hard to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. And that's why when people write me and say, hey Ben, can I do Think Big when I'm trying to lose all this weight? I'm like, no, you're never gonna recover. Your body's basically taking it from both sides. You've got, on the one hand, you're doing a lot of damage to your body with the workout, and on the other hand, you're not giving it the nutrients it needs to grow and needs to get out of that alarm phase. So that's very, very important. And we'll cover nutrition more in later lectures. Let's talk more about the sufficient stimulus. When we're talking about strength, the ultimate goal is weight on the bar. And so there's lots of different ways that we can get this sufficient stimulus. And if you think back to periodization, one of those ways is by starting with very high volume or higher volume and lower intensity and gradually decreasing the volume and increasing the intensity. However, when it comes to hypertrophy, when it comes to muscular size, we don't really care about the weight on the bar. And what that means is that we have a bigger range of variables to work with when it comes to sufficient stimulus. Let's think about it. Let's say that I'm training for a powerlifting competition and I start out doing 135 for a set of 10. Well, eventually I need to work to the point where I'm doing something for a set of one. Let's say it's 200 pounds for a set of one. And so gradually I'm going to go, maybe I'll go 185 for 5, and then next work I'll do 195 for 3, or I'm making these numbers up, 200 for 1. Well, if my goal is hypertrophy, I don't ever need to do that 200 for 1. I can do 135 for 10. Maybe the next workout I do 135 for 2 sets of 10. Maybe the workout after that I do 135 for 10 and I do some incline dumbbell pressing. In each of these cases, I'm still causing sufficient stimulus. I'm still giving my body the training load that it needs to enter that alarm phase, but I'm not necessarily working towards that bigger 1 rep maximum, if that makes sense. And it's because your body's gonna, if you think back to how we gain strength, there's a lot more in it than just that training response, right? We have the frequency where we're practicing, our central nervous system getting more efficient, that sort of thing. So we have more ways to go about creating this sufficient stimulus. That said, there's a lot of reasons why it's beneficial to use more volume to create that sufficient stimulus. Basically though, it comes down to the fact that your body can recover from more volume a little bit easier than it can from more intensity. For the most part. It's not always true, but for our purposes it is. That's important because when we're talking about muscular size, we're not so much worried about the degree of the training response. When your body recovers from training, it does so sporadically almost. You don't really know when your body is going to produce this muscle. And when it does produce this new muscle, it happens very incrementally. You're not going to add tons and tons of pounds of muscle at once. You're adding just a little bit at a time. And so it's very beneficial to try and have this recovery from training response happen as often as possible, right? So more or less, we want more frequency. We want this to happen more often. Now for strength, it doesn't really matter, right? Because let's say we have one really super hard workout, and then we have some other light workouts where we're really just allowing ourselves to recover from that super hard workout, but we come back and hey, now our central nervous system's really used to taking a super heavy weight like 95%, and we're actually stronger than we were before. Here, all that stuff doesn't matter as much. Here we're really just focused on that muscle protein synthesis. As you guys can probably see, this is a lot more complicated than it is gaining strength, and it's a lot less direct, right? We're not adding weight to the bar and we know we're getting stronger. Generally, if you're adding weight to the bar, your muscles are going to get bigger, but that's not always true. Then there's other factors that are going to make it even more complicated. There's hyperplasia that we haven't talked about because it's not all that well understood. There are some suggestions that training with higher volume can cause hyperplasia. There's some suggestions that drugs can cause it, but it's not as well understood as hypertrophy. And then there's the matter of appearance, and this is what we'll get into next time. Think about when you look at a powerlifter like Larry Wheels or Dan Green, very high level, extremely muscular powerlifter, and compare that to a bodybuilder of similar size and weight. The bodybuilder is usually going to look a lot bigger. And that has to do with a lot of things that go into appearance other than just muscular size. So there's things like bone structure. If you have wider shoulders and a narrower waist, that's going to make you look bigger. There's things like muscle insertion. I can actually show you all that. So I tore this bicep, right? And so they had to reattach the bicep to the elbow. And so now the bicep inserts a little bit higher up. Compared to this arm, right, which I never tore, the bicep inserts pretty far down close to my elbow. Well, the closer to your elbow the bicep inserts, the bigger it's going to look, even if they're the same size, right? So my arms are exactly the same size of measure with a tape measure, but one looks bigger than the other because of those muscular insertions. Things like that you can't really control, right? And so this is another reason why when people are really, really struggling to look like bodybuilders, it can be really, really hard if they don't have the genetic structure for it. Doesn't mean it's impossible, it just means that they'll have to use other strategies in order to cover up for those genetic weaknesses. So this is just the first of probably several lectures we'll have to do to talk about how we're going to incorporate more training for size into our strength training programs. You can see that just based on how complicated this is, when you're trying to combine the two, it's extremely, extremely difficult. And that's one of the major reasons why if you follow my free programs, you'll notice that, hey, there's not that much assistance work in there. It's because when you're trying to figure out how do I create my own program, and then you add this into the mix, it's very, very difficult. But we will get there. In the meantime, I'm going to let you all know there is the new course available. It's still on sale for the rest of the week, so you got the weekend. And then starting today, there's going to be another kind of addition to that course. So far in the Unfuck series, we've mainly been talking about programming. I had a couple videos on technique. And if you go and watch those videos on technique, you'll notice that I don't really talk about specifics, right? I'm talking about general things that apply to more or less everyone who's going to squat, right? You want a neutral spine position, stuff like that. So the reason for that is, just like with programming, technique is very, very individual. Your leverages, your muscular strengths and weakness, all these sorts of things go into defining what creates optimal technique. And being able to identify optimal technique takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of experience. So I've been struggling with, okay, how can I help you guys get this experience, right? Because unless you train at a really good gym, you're probably not going to have that many people around you to help. So what I'm starting today, we're going to have a new program called Office Hours. You can sign up for this using the link below. And in Office Hours, I'm going to take videos that you guys submit, and Dominic, my partner, and I, we're going to analyze them in real time. So we're going to do live YouTube sessions where we're going to break down everything that goes into technique. So not only your positioning, not only the weight on the bar, but the equipment you're using, the speed of your reps, all these sorts of things, and give you guys an opportunity to ask questions about, okay, so why is it that this guy needs a wider stance? Why is it that he needs a lower bar position? Why is it that he should pull sumo instead of conventional? We're going to do that over and over and over again. And with lots of examples like this, you're going to get better at just having that eye, having that tacit knowledge to identify, oh, okay, this is the sort of position that I should be in if I'm trying to do an optimal deadlift. This is how I need to position my hands for the bench press. It's going to take a long time, so this is going to be a gradual process. We're going to have these every week. But I think it's something that'll be pretty new. I haven't seen this done before, and I think it'll be really, really helpful for you all. So check that out. Check out the new program. As always, let me know if you have questions. I know this lecture was a little winding, right? Maybe not as straightforward as you had hoped, and that's because gaining muscular size isn't as straightforward as most people hoped. But little by little, we'll piece it all together. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.